This is a Monty moment. I'm Johnny Montalbano, getting you set for the final college football Saturday in October and the final one before the first college football playoff rankings are revealed on Halloween night. And when we look back at last week for a moment, I think we learned a few things as the rankings get closer to being revealed. A, if an ACC school is going to be represented, it's going to be Florida State and only Florida State after the major upset by Virginia over North Carolina and the Seminoles beating Duke on Saturday night. And B, don't count out Alabama. Yet again, when it looked like they were in trouble, they prevailed in the end, rallying from a rough first half against Tennessee. It was all tied in the second half, and in the end, the Tide topped the Vols 34-20. Now, Nick Saban's squad is still going to need some help, and help he might get if the Pac-12 schools continue to cancel each other out. And what about the Michigan sign stealing scandal, and how does that play a role in the college football playoff rankings and the AP Top 25 poll? I say that because let's say the NCAA finds enough evidence to come down on the university and even Jim Harbaugh. They could rule the Wolverines ineligible. You've seen some of the insiders talking about that, and it certainly is a possibility. Now, again, this is still a rapidly developing story. It seems like we continue to get more details about it every single day, but we will get into that in just a moment. But if we look at the top 25 poll for this week, and remember the CFP ranking, which will come out on Tuesday night, will differ from the AP poll. And usually the first rankings we tend to have an issue with the poll. But when we look at the top 25 poll here for just a second, the top of the poll did remain unchanged. You still have Georgia at number one. You have Michigan still at second. Ohio State with their win, a big win for them against Penn State last Saturday. They stay at three. Florida State is at four. Washington 5, Oklahoma 6, and then you did have Texas and Oregon both move up a slot to 7 and 8 respectively. You had Alabama move up 2 spots with their win to 9. Penn State with their loss, they dropped to 3. Oregon State moved up 1 to 11. Ole Miss also moved up 1 to 11. Utah moved up to 13. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish moved up to 14. LSU bounced back. They moved up 4 spots to 15. Missouri jumped 4 to 16, and then you had the Tar Heels with that major loss. Pretty much, not pretty much, it took them out of the playoff picture. And I talked about last week how that could have been my dark horse candidate if they would have ran the table and won the ACC championship. Well, that's not going to happen. You cannot lose to Virginia and talk about them as a college football playoff team. I'm sorry, but they dropped to 17. Louisville bounced back. They moved up 3 spots. They got a good ACC showdown with Duke on Saturday night. Air Force continues their winning ways. They beat Navy 17-6, so they jumped up 3 spots. Duke did drop 4. Tennessee dropped 4 to 20 and 21st, respectively. Tulane moved up to 22nd. UCLA up to 23rd. USC, another bad loss for them against Utah. They dropped 6 to 24. And then one of the best stories of the year in college football, James Madison in the Sun Belt Conference moved up into the top 25 poll, and they are 7-0 on the year in just their second year in FBS play. What a remarkable job that James Madison squad is doing. And their next game will be against ODU at 8 p.m. Eastern on the 28th. So that's what the top 25 poll again. Now the top 6 remain unchanged. We'll see what the playoff committee decides because there's a few factors into all this. You know, how are they going to factor Georgia right now without Brock Bowers? You know, how are they going to? Is the whole sign stealing incident going to play a role with Michigan? That's what I would start with here too. Big thing with Texas also. Quinn Ewers, their quarterback, is going to be out an indefinite length of time. So how do the injuries, how does the sign stealing scandal play in? We'll know more about that coming up next week. Now let's get to the sign stealing scandal, the latest here with Michigan. And the latest that's being reported from Pete Thamel and Mark Schlabath over there at ESPN is involving Connor Stallions. He is the guy that right now is the staffer, I should say, that bought the tickets for the non-Big Ten games. And the latest that we've been hearing about is that he bought tickets for games at 4 schools outside of the Big Ten that were either in college football playoff contention or playing contenders. There's also a record of him buying tickets to the 2021 and 22 SEC title games, according to ESPN. The tickets to the SEC title games were purchased on the secondary market, according to sources. And ESPN also learning that Stallions, who's at the center of the investigation, bought tickets to a 12th Big Ten school as sources at 12 of the 13 possible Big Ten schools have a record of him buying a ticket there. ESPN originally reported that there were 11. Now, according to four of those sources, all the tickets for games outside of the Big Ten involved college football playoff contenders and were purchased either towards the middle or end of the 2022 season, as Michigan was heading to the CFP for the second consecutive season, and they're on their way possibly to a third one as well. Um, now, now Jim Harbaugh has said that he does not know any knowledge about this, but here's the thing with all this. Do coaches sign steal? They probably do. I know that there are a bit like Brian Kelly's of the world and other coaches have come out and said yes, there's sign stealing stuff, but this is a situation where you have a university here in Michigan who has had trouble with their head coach and Harbaugh. Again, Harbaugh is suspended for the first three games of this year. And it feels like things are piling on, and that's where it gets kind of fishy in all this. And again, this story is going to continue to develop, but if they find out that this goes far enough, and if this even leads up to a situation with Harbaugh, then Michigan could be bowl ineligible, and that would take them out of a college football bowl game, and that would really benefit the likes of, let's say, Alabama or maybe one of the Pac-12 schools, as we know it. Again, still developing story. We'll see if they come down with a decision here. I don't know when this is going to be, but we're coming down the stretch of this season. We have about a month to go until the conference championships, and then we'll get a little bit more clarity in terms of the poll rank. But keep an eye on this Michigan story because it is still developing. But let's get to this upcoming weekend now. Not really a lot of games that may have major college football playoff implications here, but we're going to find three games for you to pick. I do have one that might have an interesting one in the Pac-12 that we're going to get to. But last week we went 2-0-1, and I'll be honest with you, we should have gone 3-0. I mean, what it was a very crazy. Well, really, actually, maybe we should have gone 2-1. Maybe in some ways, when you look at it, maybe we got fortunate. We went 2-1. Now, the game that we pushed on was Navy getting 11. Actually, no, we should have gone 3-0 because we took Navy getting 11 points, and they ended up scoring a touchdown to make it 17-6 against Air Force. And again, this was late in the fourth quarter, and Navy decides to go for two. Why? If you're putting money on the game, and you're taking Navy plus the points. They're down 17-6. A 2-point conversion there makes it 17-8. And yeah, that'd be great. You'd cover, but you'd cover with an extra point. And a 2-point conversion that spot still puts you down two scores. So like it must be driving you nuts there if you're a betting person on that game. But that's why we don't bet for real. But yeah, so I took Navy getting 11 against Air Force. The better play would have been, if I actually really had a play, would have been taking the under. And once again, in a service academy game, the under hit, only 23 points scored. But that was one. And then the two games we did win, Oklahoma State plus 3.5 against West Virginia. They won that game outright. And we did win with Florida State laying the 14 against Duke. Now, I was scared making that pick, but they ended up pulling away late. I really would have been wondering if Riley Leonard was able to play the whole game and was healthy. Maybe it would have been a different story, but it was not. So we'll take it. We're 2-0-1 last week, 17-11-1 on the season here in 2023. This week, I'm going a couple of bold picks, and you'll see why here I call these bold. It's one of them, two of them I'm not really comfortable in doing, but I have a feeling you talk about bounce back spots. That's why I'm going to do this in game one. At 12 Eastern on CBS, you got 10th ranked Penn State trying to rebound off that loss against Ohio State last week, and they are laying 32 points at home against Indiana. And I got to tell you, I have no issue laying the 32 with Penn State here. The Nittany Lions own a 24-2 all-time record versus the Hoosiers, including a 12-0 record at home. This season, Indiana is 0-5 against Power 5 teams, and its only two wins this year are against an FCS school and a 1-7 Akron squad. Now, over the last three games, Indiana's been outscored 127-38, losing each game by at least 17 points. It ranks in the bottom 10 nationally with just under 18 points a game, while Penn State boasts a top 10 scoring unit on both offense and defense. The Nittany Lions defense has given up just 6 points per game over the last 6 home games, and they're 6-1 against the spread in 2023. So you date that back to last season, the Nittany Lions have just one loss against the spread over the last calendar year, and I think they're going to be highly motivated after last week's defeat to Ohio State. And given Penn State's domination in this all-time series, I have no issue laying the 32. So give me the Nittany Lions minus 32 over Indiana in game one. Game two, also a 12 p.m. Eastern game on ESPN2. we're going to go with Houston against Kansas State. And Kansas State and they are 17.5 point favorite in this one. Again, I don't have any issue laying the points here. K-State trampled the Horned Frogs at home in week 8 to move to 3-1 in the Big 12. A winning run here over the next month is very significant for the Wildcats because they could play their way into the Big 12 championship game. The Longhorns might be vulnerable here in this spot without the injured Quinn Ewers, and the Oklahoma Sooners are also susceptible to a loss or two if they continue to put away opponents. So the Big 12 is not, a lock for a playoff spot. Really, their two best shots, I think, are Oklahoma and Texas. And Oklahoma has got to run the table, in my opinion, and win the Big 12 championship to be in this discussion. Again, we talked about it. Texas has the big win against Bama earlier in the year, but I think Chris Klieman's team should take care of the Cougars at home on Saturday. Houston was competitive against Texas last week, but it has some rough performances in its first year in the Big 12. And those Cougars fell by 23 to TCU, 21 in the points to Texas Tech to kick off its Big 12 schedule. And all three of Kansas State's in-conference wins this year have come by double digits. Saturday's win over TCU to me proved how strong the Wildcats can be on both sides of the ball, and they can contain this Houston offense that does average 400 and just under 408 yards a game. And their offense should take advantage of a Cougars defense that has been gashed for about 420 yards per contest. So give me the Wildcats laying the 17.5 at home against the Cougars in game 2. Game 3, I'm taking 13th ranked Utah, getting 6.5 here against 8th ranked Oregon. I don't know if they're going to win this game. I think they're going to keep it inside the number here. And you look at this Ute squad, which is a team that we've documented a lot here in the Montie moment over the last 2 seasons. Kyle Whittingham's squad, I say Kyle Whittingham himself, the squad's been very, very good considering the situation with Cam Rising. But you have to give the head coach Kyle Whittingham a lot of credit here because he's done a tremendous job with this Utes team without Cam Rising all season. They found a way to get it done here with Bryson Barnes at quarterback. And this is also a rare occasion where the Utes are a home underdog. And they're getting almost a touchdown in this one. Now, their defense did allow 6.3 yards per carry against USC last week. That was maybe the only thing you'd have a little bit of concern here. But if you're on Oregon's side, if they can establish that running game around Bo Nix, then they will definitely win this game, and I think they might cover it. But I just feel like this line is risky knowing how good Utah is at home. Oregon is 2-2 straight up at Utah since the Utes joined the Pac-12. And it just feels like this feels like 30 to 27, 30 to 24, 29, 26. It's something along those lines. I think Oregon will win, but we know how much the Ducks also need this win to stay alive in the CFP discussion. And even if they eke out a win here, they'll still be in that discussion. And I think they will. That's exactly what's going to happen here. So I think the Ducks win, but I'm going to take the Utes getting the 6.5 at home. And I even wouldn't be surprised if the Utes pull off this one at home in game 3. So the 3 picks for you this week in week 9 of college football, the last one before the college football playoff rankings. I'm going to take 10th ranked Penn State laying the 32 at home against the Hoosiers. I'm going to take the Wildcats, the Kansas State Wildcats, laying 17.5 over Houston. And I'm going to grab the 6.5 with the Utah Utes against Oregon in game 3. And that'll wrap up a busy week for me here on the ETB network. 5 episodes in 4 days, but it's just that time of the year. And I got to tell you, I love it. And we're heading into November, and it's only going to get that much better. And including our college football Monty moment. And next week's going to be a big week. Again, the first college football playoff rankings come out on Tuesday. We will react to that on Wednesday. Brody Sorbera, who was with me a few weeks back in one of the big weeks of the year earlier in the season, he's going to come back on with me next week to react and discuss the first college football playoff rankings, which I feel like always have an initial hiccup. So we will react to that. That'll drop on Wednesday, unless of course there's some breaking news that may push it back. So stay tuned. Best thing to do, folks, is to follow us on social media at Game On ETB on Facebook and Twitter, on Instagram at GameOn_ETB. Also, you can follow me on Facebook, on Twitter and Instagram, I should say, at Montalbano NY. And of course, our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ETB Network, is a great way to get informed of when our stuff's going to be coming out. If you hit that notification bell. Also, if you like all of our Monty Moments content, leave us a like. And if you're new, hit that subscribe button so you also can join us there as well. Also, check us out at etbpodcast.com for great blog posts from all of our talent, including from Brody and from all of our guys on NFL stuff, whether it's been picks or fantasy or any of the other sports, and so much more. And of course, if you can't watch us on YouTube, make sure to check us out on the go. You can download the Monty Moments on your favorite podcast platform and listen that way. So have yourselves a great weekend, everybody. I will see you next week, which will be next month in November, for some more great stuff. I'm Johnny Montalbano.